Okay, Sif Gimel discusses Shutfis in the Davar Shlei B'Olam, something which the products are not in existence yet, and therefore, can a kinyan be made? Can you make an agreement on something which is going to happen? Everybody knows you can make a kinyan in Davar Shlei B'Olam is a big question and discussion, and this is what this if is discussing. So, big machlekes rishonim, which the Tur brings, and the Mechaber paskins one way, the Ramah paskins the other way. The Mechaber starts, before discussing Mechaber's shit, and then we'll move on to what the Ramah brings. The Mechaber says as follows: you have two people who are umnim, who they do work with their hands. For example, two people who sew clothing, two people who weave material for making clothing, etc. It could be also two people that, examples are not brought, two people that build furniture, that their work is with their hands, and they made a shutfis between them, even with a kinyan. That what's the shutfis going to be? That anything that any person will get down the line, will produce, will be a shutfis. There is no shutfis at all, according to the Mechaber. Why? Because a person cannot be makne a davar shalei bala olam. That's the beginning of the Mechaber. The end of the Mechaber, skip the whole Ramah now, is that if these people put their money together and they purchase the material from which you're going to make the clothing, or they purchase the material from which you're going to make the material to make clothing from, or in the case of furniture, if they're going to purchase together the wood, and the money is joint money, then they do become shutfim, and all their profits that's going to come from this is going to be split halfway. Why? Because in such a case, simple logic is the kinyan is not on a davar shaloi bala olam. The kinyan is on the products which were there. This shit is the shit of the Rambam and the Ramban. That's the Tur brings them. The Prisha on the Tur right away adds over here. He says that what the Mechaber says, well, it's not really the Mechaber, but this what the shit of the Rambam, that if they purchase the material, the raw material together, and that's the only time that they become shutfim, the idea behind it is that if the minig in this place is that every time, every person who creates something, he purchases his own materials to make something, so if one purchases, each person who makes clothing purchases his own material, and these two people went and changed what the normal thing is. That means they did a change in the way that it's usually done. So they showed, we're doing a change up, and everybody else purchases independently. We're going to purchase together. If that's the case, then that becomes a shutfis. And the chiddush of the Rambam is that even though the final product is not done b'shutfus, each one does his own clothing, the mere fact that the raw materials are purchased together, that already creates a shutfus. But if the shutfus is only on the future monies that are going to come in, on that is davar shel ba'olam, you can't make a kinyan. And the other, what's the nakuda over here? What does the kinyan help according to the Rambam? That they cannot be chayzer, even on future proceeds. That means if they made such a kinyan on the raw materials, then nobody could change his mind in the middle and say, I don't want to continue being a partner with you going weiter. That's what the Shach over here explains. This is Koton Tes. Lachas Kam v'Kam on any proceeds that were already made. Now, even though the Prisha doesn't discuss what I'm going to say now, what he's trying to tell you about purchasing is, let's say that the raw materials don't have to be purchased, or that the minhag in town is that everybody borrows, takes from materials and doesn't pay for them, but rather they pay for it afterwards. There is a place where everybody could take material from, they could sew clothing, and then you have to give, then you pay later. In such a case, then what in Vazba steht the shutfus? How are they going to? There has to be something Shabala Olam on which the shutfus, the kinyan, is going to be chal. That's according to the Rambam. The shit of the other Rishonim is that the kinyan is on the guf, and that we're going to get to later because that's the shit of the Ramah. Let's continue with the Rambam. The Bach over here explains what the way the Tur understood the Rambam is that this kinyan doesn't have any effect even retroactively, which means, let's say they made the kinyan on a Tuesday, and then 6 months later is when all the clothing were sold, and then and then one person says, I do not want to split the profits with you, even though they made a kinyan. The understanding, the way the Torah understood the Rambam is that even on the other, the fact that it says ain't shutfus, that there is no shutfus, means that that even retroactively, even on the past, the fact you didn't say anything for 6 months and everybody was working under that impression, still there is no, you don't have to share any of the profits, and each one could say, the kinyan is nothing, according to the Rambam, and therefore I don't have to share with you any of the profits. I did everything for myself. And that's how the Torah understands the Rambam and the Ramban. The Bach says it makes no sense because if you look at the Rivosh and the Ramban himself, it's very clear that they do make a differentiation between profits that were already made, that those have to be split and you can't change your mind on those profits, and profits that were not made yet. That on that is when we say that the Rambam says, that means that what happens is only from now on. It's a din in chazara, it's not a din in shutfus. And he says, I don't understand how the Tur was able to understand the Ramban in such a way. Maybe the Rambam you could understand that way. Only on the Rambam you could do it. But not the Ramban. You can't combine the Rambam and the Ramban into one if you want to go retroactively. That's the Bach's kasha on the Tur. However, if the Shach over here understands the way the Shach understands the Mechaber who quotes the Rambam is, that you could go, the first Shach in Sifkot and Gimel, which is in the beginning of the Rambam, says you could go, that this applies even retroactively on past Revachim, and the Shach and Sifkot and Tes, when it discusses when the kinyan does work, says it also goes on back Revachim, which means that whichever way you're going to look at it, it will go on the Revachim retroactively.
That is chal.
If there is a kinyan and it is chal, according to the Rambam, it's chal on the retroactively also. And if there is a kinyan and it's not chal, according to the Rambam, it's not chal on the past. Either. Rabbi Kiva Eger over here brings a marshach, Siman Kuf Pei Hei, which is an additional point on the Mechaber, that if Ikar HaShutfus is a Davar Shebala Olam, that means the main partnership was regarding something which is in existence today, and the only thing that they're going to not be, and they add onto it also that they're going to be Shutfim in something which is Sheloi Bala Olam, then it works even according to the Rambam, because the Ikar HaShutfus is on something Shebala Olam. Then you add on to it other things as add-ons, and Davar Sheloi Bala Olam, it does work. And the Knesset,
Is that the same thing of Ban Yoscher? Same thing with Chavar said?
If what?
That's what he just said. It's basically if you incorporate something which is tangible, then you could do also.
You could do future, he says. But he says if Milchatchila you make a shutfus and you say, we're going to do this business and this is we have here, wine and then this and that. And also, we're also professionals. We're also going to be doing other things together in partnership that is Davar Shlei B'al Olam. Independent. The Mechaber says that you have to have a kinyan on the raw materials which are going to produce a Davar Shlei B'al Olam.
So it could be unrelated.
What's mashma from the Malashach is be unrelated. The Knesset Agdoila Nagoy Satur Sifkot in Yutches says that this is also same thing as mashma from the Rashba, and the Marash Alevi, and the Marash Dam, and the Maria Levi. Maria Levi, Marash Alevi is father and son. Just right now it slipped my mind who is the father, who is the son. You could check it afterwards. However, the Maria Levi says that the money from which these two partnerships are going to work has to be the same. It has to be joint money. That means you could have a pile of money from which you're going to say there's things that davar shebal olam and things that davar shalai bal olam. But you can't say that there's davar shebal olam and that money you're going to make a shutfus on that and then tack on top of it a davar shalai bal olam that the money for it is not in existence yet. The Mata Shimon Nagoyas Atura Isyud says no, it's not the way it is. Mata Shimon and Knesset Agdela are also, I think one is a grandfather and a grandson, or a father and a son. I think grandfather, grandson. He brings from Mishpatim Yesharim that you can't, it's not so. You can't combine a davar shalei bal olam and a davar shebal olam. This idea that you could have two together, the davar shalei bal olam, according to the Rambam, could be attached to davar shebal olam, is only if you already made a proper shutfus like you're supposed to. Davar shebal olam. And shutfus is operating. And now you come and you want to add onto it another shutfus. You say, we're anyways partners in this grocery store which has all the products over here. Why don't we also do another side business venture? Then it works. But not if meikara you want to start a partnership which includes elements of davar shebal olam and davar shaloi bal olam, because then there's nothing on what the Tanai could be chal. It means you could add a shutfus, a Tanai in davar shaloi bal olam, a shutfus only on an already existing shutfus in a davar shebal olam. But something which the shutfus was never chal, then you cannot make a kinyan to effectuate a shutfus on something which is part davar shebal olam and part davar shaloi bal olam. So it's basically three ways how to understand the Rambam, how to explain the combination of davar shebal olam and davar shaloi bal olam when it comes to a shutfus according to the Rambam. You have the way that Rabbi Kiva Eger understands the Marashach, that as long as you have a shutfus in the davar shebal olam, you could add onto it whatever you want. You have the Knesset Agdela, who he brings all the people that support that view. You have the Maria Levi, who makes it says that it has to be the same money for the davar shebal olam and davar shalai bal olam, but it could still be from the beginning. And you have the Mata Shimon that brings the Mishpatim Yesharim, that there has to be an existing structured shutfus in the davar shebal olam before you could then later add something which is shaloi bal olam. Now, why is it that according to the Rambam you cannot make a kinyan on davar shaloi bal olam? Yeah, simply the Lavush explains something which common sense. There is no chayfetz on which the shutfus could be chal. There's no physical thing on which the shutfus could be chal. You can't make a kinyan on something which is air, which doesn't exist. You want to say that you could make a kinyan on the body of the person, that's the shit of the other Rishonim. Why does the Rambam not hold of that? A kinyan chalipin or other kinyanim do not work on a goof of a person. A shibud on the goof of the person to do something. Doesn't work according to the Rambam. And therefore, any form, on the chayfetz, it's like Balaylam says no kinyan. On the guf adam, it's not chal either. So therefore, any kinyan you do is a kinyan dvarim ba'alma. And therefore, the kinyan is worthless.
So, and according to other Rishonim, which you said you're being makna guf of grace, which guf are you being makna?
Guf adam, the work that he's going to do.
What's he going to do with his comparison
with evidence, that's what it says. So even though the Lavush continues, and even though a person could be mechayev, be meshabed himself with a kinyan to do something, if there's no smachta, obviously. According to the Rambam, it's only if there's a specific amount, a specific job, defined, the shibud is on a defined thing. Not a global shibud on any future levachim, any future work that we're going to do, davar she'en lekitzvah. And davar she'en lekitzvah on the goof of a person is a kinyan dvarim. And therefore, only if there is a joint pot of money on which the kinyan could be chal, then the shutfas could be chal on that pile. That's how the Shaylas Tshuvas Sheilas David Choshen Mishpat Siman Aleph, that's how he paraphrases the Levush to understand the Shitta of the Rambam. What happens if you have a minhag medina that you could make a kinyan on davar shaloi b'loilam, or you have askamas asaychrim that you could do a kinyan on davar shaloi b'loilam? What's the din? So you have the Vada Mishpat, the grandson of the Knesset Agdolim, Sifkot and Yud, he says that if they made a schayvus one to another, it works. Even on the davar shaloi b'loilam, even according to the Rambam. And the Dvar Mishpat tells you, and look, in schayvus to each one was chayv to the other person to do something.
That's a goof, no?
The goof, yeah, not like the way the Levush understands. He says, if there is such a minhag. And he tells you, go look in the Knesset Agdolim. Knesset Agdolim goes to Torah is to Zion, who brings the Marival, that it works if you make such a schayvus, and the Marash Alevi that we already mentioned, and the Maria Levi that we mentioned. And then he brings from a book called She'eris Yehuda that he says exactly the opposite. The whole machlek is between the Ramban on one side, and the Ravid and the Rosh and everybody else on the other side is only when you do a schayvus of the body to do, and the guf is mischayv to do a certain malacha. Because if there is no schayvus, stam speaking, be'alma, let's become shutfim, and you do a kinyan, even if you do a kinyan in davar shaloi b'loilam without a schayvus, says even the Ravid would be moided that it means nothing. The Ravid is talking about that if there is a schayvus and you're going to do a specific work, only then the schayvus has, the kinyan is chal on the schayvus. But otherwise it doesn't work. And the Knesset Agdolim says that the She'eris Yehuda's conclusion is that it does work. Schayvus does work according to the Rambam, not like the She'eris Yehuda. And the Dvar Mishpat says, with all due respect to grandfather Knesset Agdolim, that's not what the She'eris Yehuda says. She'eris Yehuda does not hold that it works.
Schayvus works also, doesn't it?
According to the Rambam, that according to the Rambam, it for sure works. Does the schayvus work according to the Rambam?
What's not according to the Ravid and the Rambam when it comes to making a shofar without anything tangible? You both agree that just schayvus itself you can make a kinyan on.
No, they don't agree with schayvus itself. The shaila is if you can make a schayvus with a kinyan if it's going to work according to the Rambam or not. According to the Ravid l'chayra you don't even need a schayvus. A kinyan is enough.
What's the get of schayvus?
That the kinyan is I'm right now. That the kinyan is not that we're good that any profit is going to come in. The kinyan is that I'm committing myself to work for you and you're committing yourself to work for me. Yeah. And therefore the Dvar Mishpat says that at the end of the day, whoever is a muchzak in the profits could say kimli, in this machlekes, whether a schayvus works or doesn't work, or do we need a schayvus or not. And it all boils down to the muchzak could always say kimli. Interestingly, the Knesset Agdolim seems to imply that in this case, the halacha is like the Ravid, not like the Rambam, and nobody could say kimli like the Rambam. That's the implication of the Knesset Agdolim. The Knesset Agdolim doesn't write it clearly, but that's what it seems like further in the Knesset Agdolim. The Knesset Agdolim in Ois Yud Zayin says.
Doesn't the Shulchan bring down the Rambam?
Only the Rambam.
Right. So in the Klal, you could always say kimli and you have to arch.
That's what the Knesset Agdolim says. And in this case, no, because almost everybody disagrees on the Rambam. The majority of poskim disagree on the Rambam. The halacha is not like the Rambam. Now, Kesek Delim, the next one, Oisid Zayin, brings the same Maria Levi in the Marshach, and he says over there, because the Kesek Delim follows that the Ravid, that the kinyan does work. And he says that if you made a kinyan, you made a shtar, you made a shtar, and you didn't write the lashon of ischayvus, you just wrote a shtar, we agreed to become shutfim. Plain, become shutfim. It still works as if the lashon was already written. That means you have a shtar, things that should have been written in the Bezdin looks at it and says, standard shtar should have had these lashonos, doesn't have it it's as if these are there. The Kesek Delim says, I'm not comfortable with that. If you don't have a lashon ischayvus in it, even according to the Ravid, lav davka, it would work. And now comes regarding the minig bnei ha'umnis, and oischof. This is where the Kesek Delim discuss it, and he brings it from the Marshach.
What are you writing about ischayvus? What does it mean you're writing ischayvus? Each one is obligated to what?
Each one says, ani achosem atom ischayev.
To what?
To work in this asik shutfus, to work for the benefit of the shutfus and bring money, and the money will be split. Each one's mischayev to the other one. In Ois Chaf, he discusses about the minig. So he brings in the Marshach and the Mishpat Tzedek and the Ladbaz that if any t'nai, any condition which is done between shutfim, which is a davar arogil between shutfim and this place, then a kinyan works. You might not even need a kinyan, even dibur works. And the way the Kesek Delim phrases it, it seems like even the Rambam and the Ramban would be moida that if the minig hamokim is as such, then it works. And he brings the Maharik. The Maharik clearly says that it works even according to the Rambam and the Ramban. And then comes the question, what does minig medina, what does t'nai hasoichri mean? Does it mean every single person who is a mumche or not? For that you have the Mishpat Shalom and brings the Marashdam, Siman Kufnun Gimel, that the Rubai Kekulei of the majority of professionals agree to a certain set of rules, that's already enough, and everybody else is bound by it. And the Mishpat Shalom himself says, I'm not so comfortable with doing it, it leaves it as a question mark. Yep, that's pretty much the shitta of we just summarized the svaras, the shitta of the Ramah. Let's move on to the Ramah. The Ramah says, we're not going to finish the whole Ramah today, but the first 3 points, the main 3 points of the Ramah. First thing that Ramah brings, the first Yeshayimrim, that in Davar Shalei Ba'La'olam, a kinyan does work, but not Dibur. Dibur is the second Yeshayimrim. Why does a kinyan work? The Smei right away says, Sivkot and Tes, that even though the chayfetz, the actual chayfetz from which you're going to make money is Davar Shalei Ba'La'olam, but the gufa mischayev, the body of the person, of the shutaf is here. And the kinyan is chal on the kinyan is chal on the guf of the person who is doing this specific shi'vud, just like by avodim. So the Bach points out, this is a shit of the Ravid. The Bach points out that obviously it will only work for umnim, because they do work with their own bodies, not stam shutfim.
Mind and heart,
no, they do shi'bud is on the guf, that my body is going to be now putting nails into it. The Minchas Pitim, that's how he understands. The Minchas Pitim develops this idea of the Bach and says that according to the Ravid, the shitta is because you doimet an eved, that there's a shi'bud on the guf. What's by the eved? What's the kinyan of the eved? That he has to do certain work for you. So, eved ivri. So therefore, when you have a shi'bud, the shi'bud is chal, the kinyan is on the shi'bud of the body. The shi'bud of the body is only on hand work that the body is doing. And it doesn't work for stam shutfus. If they have a shutfus and chafetzim, that we're going to buy something together, then even according to the Raiva, the kinyan wouldn't work in it. That's how the Minchas Pitim understands. He says that's the svara, and that's how he understands. That seems like that's the svara of the Bach also. That's the Ravid. According to the Raiva, do you need a kinyan? That's what the Marik points out in Siman Kuf Pei Aleph, that the shita of the Raiva, is that you need a kinyan. That in a davar shalei b'laylam, you need a kinyan on the bodies of the people who are doing the shutfis, the umanim who are doing the shutfis, so there should be a shibud on the body. No, but that's the first yeshayimlim. And then the second one is afilu.
That's al-marcha, that's not driving.
Right. Saying, but the Marik says that if there's no kinyan, he explains, he said this is the Marik is before the Ramah. Just telling you, the Marik explains what the shit of the Raiva. He tells you the Ramah saw the Marik. That it's clear that there has to be a kinyan. That's it. That's why the Raiva is separate than the next shit, the shit of the Mardechai. What does it mean that the kinyan works according to the Raiva? So the Drisha, Sifkat and Dalet, explains it simply. If there is a kinyan, you cannot go back and change the terms of the shutfas and say, I don't want to be a shutaf anymore, even on future revachim. Yeah, that's what on the past, and even on future revachim, until the end of the term of the shutfas they decided. They decided it's going to be a year, it's a year, 2 years, 2 years, whatever the amount is it. And but the Drisha says if no kinyan was made, the Raivad requires a kinyan. If no kinyan was made, even according to the Raivad, past revachim are still in place. Just like the Drisha understands the Rambam the same way also. That on the past is never what to argue about. If we talked, if we made a kinyan, didn't make a kinyan, whichever shit that you want to follow, that doesn't work. You did something that doesn't work, it never works back. You can't come 6 months later and say, just made a windfall of money, we're not shutfim anymore. By Omnim over here. The Bach says that the Tur's way of explaining, the same Bach we mentioned before, the Bach that says that the way the Tur phrased the Rambam, and the way the Tur phrased the Raivad also, it's mashma that if there is no kinyan, even the revachim of the past, you could say, was never chal. And the Bach says it makes no sense, and that's what the Bach paskins, that no, on the revachim, just like the same as the Drisha, on the revachim of the past, the Drisha, the Prisha, the Smeh is all the same person. That on the revachim of the past, you can never, even if the original partnership was done in the oifen she'enim oil, you can't change and retroactively say that I don't want to give the revachim. And this is a Knesset Agdel in Agois Beis Yosef Ois Lamed Daled. This is where he writes that you go according to the Raivad against the Rambam, even though the Mechaber paskins like the Rambam, and that's what I mentioned before, and the implication from it is you cannot even say Kimli like the Mechaber. The Erech HaShulchan in Sifkat Gimel, Ois Gimel, brings a shita, it's not really Ois Gimel, it's on, he calls it Din Gimel, he brings the Rashba over here. Shita of the Rashba, interesting shita sa Rashba. First of all, the Rashba is pretty clear that he paskins like the Raivad, the Beis Yosef mentions it. And he says, according to the Rashba, a kinyan is not enough. Stam a kinyan on the shutfas is not enough. There has to be a schayvus, but what kind of a schayvus? What's the schayvus that's required in this kind of a partnership and a davar shalei b'laylam? There has to be a schayvus of a knas. That means we're becoming partners. That we're going to be, and we make a kinyan, that we're going to become partners. And if any of us will not do it, will not do the partnership, then we are obligated to give a knas to the other person, a kach v'kach. That's the schayvus that's needed. Not that it's enough that a schayvus that a kinyan and a schayvus that I'm going to work. There has to be a kinyan with a knas, a schayvus with a knas. And if there is no knas, there's no schayvus on the knas, you could be chayzer on the future levachim at any point. How? Specifically for davar shel b'laylam, he says. Not for every shutfus. For davar shel b'laylam.
So he's
not saying Pshat is that it's a Chayiv on the Guf?
No.
It's not a word of a Kinyan Aguf.
It's not a word of a kinyan aguf. According to the Rashba, it's not a word of a kinyan aguf.
It's the fact that you make it not, it's like a Gomer Makli.
Yeah, that's how the Erech Lechem understands, the Erech HaShulchan understands the Rashba.
And what's the story of the Rashba?
The understanding as far as the Rashba is that the kinyan is here on the knas, essentially. That's the way kinyan works, because there's a knas. So it's not a kinyan on the body, it's not a kinyan on the materials, you're essentially making a kinyan on a knas. Now, what happens, just a sidebar, according to the Rambam, let's go back to the Rambam for a second. According to the Rambam, if you're going to make a kinyan, we already mentioned the Knesset Agdela says that, brings certain opinions that if you make a schayvus, it works. The Avnei Choshen, I forgot to mention before, Sifkat Nevav says that according to the way the Beis Yosef understands the Rambam, according to the Beis Yosef understands the Rambam, a kinyan to l'shabed aguf will work also. The way that's Avnei Choshen says, that's what the Beis Yosef understands the Rambam. So you could add it to the ones we mentioned before. This is pretty. I just said it now. I missed it before. This is what the this is the first Yeshayim in the Ramah. The Shittu the Raivan comes the second Yeshayim in the Ramah, which is that even a kinyan you don't need. Stama mira be'alma, talk, conversation that we're becoming shutfim already works, and any conditions you discuss create a shutfis, and they cannot be chayzer throughout the whole time that they decided. Yeah, before we get to the yesh cholkim on it. Why is it dibur enough? So the Smeh explains the svara behind it. Being that they agree to each other, yeah, it's as if they made a kinyan. The svara of the Maram, that the Maram mentions in the svara of the Mordechai, which brings the Maram, and the Smeh doesn't mention it, but the Gra mentions it over here, is that each person is mishtabet to the other person for the hanoah that he has, behai hanoah, that the other person is mishtabet to him also. So I'm mishtabet to you for the hanoah that you're being mishtabet to me. Now the Shach over here throws in a interesting point. Says this din of the Ramah, this Yeshayimrim, is not a Yeshayimrim only in Umnim and Davar Shalei B'Alaylam. It's a global Yeshayimrim on everything that we learned until now, including on Sif Aleph, on every shutfus. That a shutfus could be, this Yeshayimrim means that a shutfus could be, any form of shutfus could be b'dibur. The chiddush over here is, if it's on a Davar Shalei B'Alaylam, dibur works. Allah has come on something which is b'Alaylam. If they put the money together, comes in the civis and says this makes absolutely no sense. You cannot. The chiddush is in Davar Shalei B'Alaylam, not in Davar Shalei B'Alaylam. Suddenly, the Shach just created a new metzius that you could make a kinyan that you don't need a kinyan for something which is b'Alaylam. So it makes no sense. As so to speak, that if you have two people that have something, and that they talk that we're going to make a shutfus, what's a shutfus? Half of my wine becomes yours and half of your oil becomes mine. The examples of Shulchan Aruch brings oil and wine for shutfim. A talk is enough to transfer ownership from one person to another. So it makes no sense. The whole reason why Davar Shalei B'Alaylam it's enough b'dibur is because you cannot make a kinyan on Davar Shalei B'Alaylam. Because there is no kinyan which would work on a Davar Shalei B'Alaylam. So therefore, this shitta is, you don't need a kinyan, not because you don't need a kinyan, because you cannot make a kinyan. So, similar to the Rambam. But comes out of it fakert. A dibur is enough. Why? Because being that you want to be kaineh, boile mikne gomer makne. Being that you wanted to, it's enough to make a kinyan. But something metaltalim which are here, so that only works for umnim, doesn't work for a regular shutef. And that only works in davar shalei b'leilam. And over here, the ratzon of the person is enough to create there's a kinyan. The dibur is like a kinyan on the ratzon, but there's no, you cannot make it on something which is materially existing. The Siva says you can't make the svara of aga of because aga of the boy lemikne gomer mikne only applies for davar shalei b'leilam because you cannot make another kinyan. But if you could make another kinyan, then this svara dibur is not enough to transfer ownership from one to another, half of it. So therefore, the Siva says, the Siva's pasuk is like this: any kind of shutfim, if they make a Tanai on davar shalei b'leilam or on future profits, then Amira Ba'alma is enough. And they're saying that that's why it works for either shutfim on the profits shalei b'leilam or umnim, whatever was mentioned in the Sif. But for that, there has to be that they started working together. Dibur alone is not enough for davar shalei b'leilam. There has to be dibur plus tchilas melacha. And if they started working together based on their dibur, then no, you can't be chayzer anymore. But if there was just talk on davar shalei b'leilam and they did not start melacha together, each one could be chayzer. Why? Because he says this is compared to a poyel. A poyel could be chayzer before the malacha started. The Avnei Choshen says kasha of the Nesivos is a good kasha. Problem is he didn't understand the shach. Yes, the shach said that. Yes, the shach indeed said that it works on other shutfos also. But why is that? Because the shach holds that every shutfus is only for revachim, is only for the davar shalei b'leilam, regardless of what products are there. Every kind of shutfus that we're going to do something, we're going to sell something, it's not that we're becoming partners in a store because I want to have 150 bottles of peanut butter, jars of peanut butter. I have nothing to do with them. Obviously, it's because I want to make profit. The fact is, now I have peanut butter, I want to make clothing. But the shutfus is not the technical thing. There's a technical thing that I have things and the different shutfus doesn't have the things yet. But the yesod of the shutfus, the chalois of the shutfus is on the revachim, not on what's behind the revachim. So therefore, this yeshayimrim is that because agav the boile mikne gomer mikne is on every form of shutfus, because every shutfus is revachim. No, there's no such thing as a shutfus that they're becoming shutfus for something or not for the purpose of revachim. Unless you buy something b'shutfus for the purpose of using it, that's something else. No, I'm not talking about that. The shutfus that we're talking about over here is for revachim. And therefore it's similar, every shutfus is similar to omnim. And therefore you can't make a kinyan in any future revachim, because it's davar shalei b'leilam. And therefore gomer makna works for everyone. But the Avnei Choshen says that's only according to the shach, and that's how the kasha and the sivus and the shach falls off. So be'etzem, the way the Nesivos says that it doesn't work for shutfim davar shalei b'leilam is not accurate. But he doesn't paskin l'maisa. He just points out. He says, and then you have the prisha that it only works for umnim. So he basically says three shittas. We have the shach that it works on every kind of shutfus. You have the Nesivos that it only works on shutfus and any form of shutfus and davar shalei b'leilam that already was tchilas melacha, and you have the prisha that it only works for umnim. The shitta of dibur is only for umnim, but not for other forms of shutfim. It's svara of the drisha is not the prisha is not really explained. Comes the third opinion of the Ramah, the third din in the Ramah, that yesh chelkim on this last, on this din of the Ramah, and they hold that you could be chayzer on any revach, on any profit that's going to come, but not on profit that was already. And the Ramah adds, and nobody has ne'emanos to say that they were chayzer. When the time for dividing the profits come, nobody has ne'emanos to say they were chayzer. What does it mean that nobody has ne'emanos to say that they were chayzer? The Erech Lechem, who is on Marikastra on the Shulchan Aruch, points out, he says that this is obviously talking about that you have to bring Eidim that the other one was chayzer. Just tells you the technical part of it. You have to have Eidim. If there's no Eidim that the other person was chayzer, that you were chayzer, then it's as if there was no chazara. The Shach over here explains, what says this Yeshayimlim? He says that when they made a kinyan to be shutfim in the davar shlei balaylam, and therefore there is no difference, a shach l'shitasi, between the umman and a regular shutif. This Yeshayimlim is that when they made a kinyan, you still could go back, in the davar shlei balaylam, you still could say that I want to back out of the shutfus in the middle, and not on the past. And the mashmos of this shach is that if they didn't make a kinyan, it was only b'dibur. According to this Yeshayimlim, you could be chayzer even on the past. Comes in the Sivis and says, in Biurim Sifkot and Hey, this makes no sense. Further, there's another in the Sivis and Sifkot and Al, we're going to get to later, that he says, B'chal, this whole din makes no sense. But questions all. But let's first go on in the Sivis regarding the shach, as we mentioned the shach first. He says, by shutfim, there is not a single opinion which holds that you could be chayzer on past revachim. The Sivis says, on the shach, because from the shach it's mashma, whether you're shutif or you're uman, if there was a kinyan, you can't be chayzer on the past, you could be chayzer on the future. If there is no kinyan, it's mashma, so the shach, you could be chayzer even on the past, according to this Yeshayimlim. The Sivis says, makes no sense. There's not a single opinion anywhere that says that when it comes to shutfim, because the shach compares shutfim and umnim, that when it comes to shutfim, one person could be chayzer boy from the money that was already made. And if you're talking about umnim, only according to the Rambam, you could be chayzer on the past. And according to the Rambam, kinyan ahin, kinyan aher makes no difference. Right? So, who's the shach talking about? So therefore he says the shach, the toes, soifrim in the shach, the printing, it's missing a word, and it has this, and it says, it should say that even if they did not make a kinyan, you still cannot be chayzer on the past, you can only be chayzer on the future, even if they did not make a kinyan. But he disagrees with the whole notion of the דיני. The דיני says, if they're shutfim in a davar shlei balaylam and they made a kinyan, you cannot be chayzer even al haba on the revachim of the future when there's a kinyan until seif hazman. And if there is no kinyan in a davar shlei balaylam, so then one person wants to be chayzer, he could only be chayzer on the future revachim, but not on the past revachim, only midin kimli like the Rambam. You could say kimli like the Rambam in this specific scenario when there was no kinyan, and they already started working together, and there was revachim, and now he says, on the future, I don't want to do it anymore. By a regular shutfim. But in the umnim, he says, if there was a kinyan, you can never be chayzer, even for the future. And if there was no kinyan by umnim and then you could be chayzer for the future, but you can't be chayzer for the past. Now, on this whole din that you could be chayzer on the future but not on the past, the Mechaber brings this Yeshayimlim, and the way the Nesivis, like we said, and the way the Nesivis understands it, there was a kinyan, there wasn't a kinyan, the different dinim, that he says, Laksa midas adin, that someone could be chayzer from the shutfus in middle. Why is that? Loksa midas hadin. It's corruption. Why is that? They made a shutfus for 12 months that they're going to do umnim davar shloi b'laylam, or not umnim davar shloi b'laylam. Made a shutfus for 12 months, starting from Nisan. First month, Nisan, Reuven made money. What does he do? End of the month, he goes, we're shutfim. Shimon didn't make any money. Reuven made money. Reuven goes and divides the money with Shimon, right? Because he has to give him half. Comes Iyar. Reuven didn't make any money. Shimon did make money. Shimon didn't distribute anything. He comes and he says, I want to be chayzer from the shutfus. What ends up happening? Chodesh Nisan, that Reuven didn't make any money. He made 50% free and clear, without working anything. Shimon made 50% without doing anything. Comes Iyar, where Shimon made money, Reuven didn't, and Reuven is left to zero. So from this whole shutfus, that was supposed to be for 12 months, ends up being that Reuven made 25% of total profit, and Shimon made 75% of total profit. Or in other words, Reuven only made profit from half of what he worked, and Shimon made full profit from what he worked, and half of what Reuven worked. So Loksa midas hadin.
When did Shimon back up? He backed up by the end of the year or beginning of the year?
Beginning of year, end of year. This is before the money was distributed. Because you have a this is not my, I forgot to mention it. You have the Erech HaShulchan said, it's matter, the Erech HaShulchan brings from the Rashba, I think, that it comes the time of distribution. That's not it's not when the money was made, it's when the money is distributed. All these dinim of Yechelim Lachzer is before the money was distributed. But over here, let's say it was before the money was made. Rosh Chodesh Iyar. Let's say Rosh Chodesh Iyar. Shimon knows that he's...
Back up now. Now it's in the shutfus.
It's not that. That's the point. The Siva says you cannot.
No. Maybe you're saying he's better.
The shutfus says if the shutfus is for 12 months, make cutter. Reuven worked the whole Nisan and made money. Shimon didn't make any money. Comes Rosh Chodesh Iyar. Shimon says, I don't want to be a shutfus with you anymore. And then Iyar, he made money.
Well, he could have not made money. He could have also made money before Iyar.
But he didn't. But Pyle, that's right. He says, Loksa midas hadin. That's what the Siva says.
In other words, why would he make more money in Iyar than before Iyar? Why would you assume that Shimon can make more money in Iyar? Like,
That's his decision. He knows that he's going to work hard. He didn't work as hard in Nisan. Whatever. He didn't have the things. They were supposed to make money each one. Maybe they're supposed to. He wasn't planning on when they made the shutfus originally. Maybe he wasn't.
Until Iyar, that he didn't work so hard. So
That's another discussion. Maybe he worked hard and he didn't make any money.
why is he not even make money?
He decided he doesn't know if he's going to make money. He said, I'm done with the shutfus. And then he didn't make money. That's what it says. Loksa midas hadin. So therefore he says that what does it mean Yachal Lachzer according to this Yesh Omrim? What does Yachal Lachzer on the future? It means Achar Zman HaShutfus. In the middle of the Shutfus, you can't be Chayzer according to this Yesh Omrim. Whether the Revachim were made or the Revachim were not made. The end of the Zman HaShutfus, that's you can be Chayzer and say, I don't want to continue. But if they made a deal for 12 months, then each one entered this deal with the understanding that we're both going to be working for 12 months. All the profit that's going to come in this 12 months is going to be shared. It belongs to both of us. The kinyan or the dibur or whatever it was that effectuated this is for both of us. And therefore, neither of them could be chayzer in the middle of the shutfus. That's how he explains it, which is a very hard way of understanding it. And he says it's because one already made money off the shutfus. That means because Chodesh Nisan, one already made money off the shutfus, Shimon already made money from Reuven, and Reuven didn't make money from Shimon. It triggered the full shutfus for the whole period of time, and you can't be chayzer anymore. According to this shitta, When could you be chayzer according to this shita? Either at the end of the term if they already got distributions, or before the first distribution is done. So if Chodesh Nisan nobody made money, Rosh Chodesh Iyar they could be chayzer. But if Chodesh Nisan one of them made money and distributed the money, you can't be chayzer until the end of the term.
The one who didn't make money can be chayzer. The one who didn't make money could be chayzer.
When?
If one was Marbiach, he could be chayzer.
If one was Marviach, but he didn't give out any money, or he did give money?
No, if one was the Reuben was Marbiach a lot of money till here.
Yeah, he can't be chayzer. No, how can he be chayzer? He already the money. The money was already given out to Shimon. He can't be chayzer. That's what the Nesiva says. You can't be chayzer once profit was already made in the shutfas. According to this shitta, that's the Nesivas. The Mishpat Tzedek Rav Shlomo Kluger disagrees, and he says no. You enter the shutfas in the davar shalei b'laylam. You know that a shutfas of davar shalei b'laylam, according to this Yeshayimrim, is hanging in the air. You're not an amaretz. You know the halachas. You know the halachas. You enter the shutfas. You took upon yourself the risk that this shutfas could be broken at any time. So comes the Chodesh Iyar. Shimon says, "I want out." So you lost. According to the Mishpat Tzedek, which then brings us another point. What happens if a guy could prove that he didn't know the halacha? I don't know what the answer to that question is. Anyways, let's go back to the Nesivos for a second. The Nesivos says that if they took profit, and that's where the shutfas is still in place, also the chafetzim, which are part of the shutfas, which were being makne from one to another, they have to split between them. Not only the revachim, but also the gufa chafetzim. And the Ulama Mishpat also mentions that, as if Katan Dalet, that regarding the gufa chafetz, you can't be chayzer after a kinyan was made, or a dibur kinyan, in which case each person was koine it. But the Ulama Mishpat is a bit problematic, because how did the kinyan happen on the davar shalei b'leilam on the chafetzim? We explained before that the kinyan is only on the revachim. How do you also include the chafetzim? So therefore, we must say that there must have been a kinyan, according to the Ulama Mishpat, must have been a kinyan on the chafetzim also in the beginning, because otherwise, how could you say the chafetzim are stuck? Yeah. The Pischei Tshuva, I'm going to conclude to one of the Nekudos. The Pischei Tshuva here brings from the Chasam Sofer, which I mentioned earlier already, that everything is dependent on minhag shutfim, and the way Pischei Tshuva understands the Chasam Sofer is that if the minhag shutfim is, so that's the implication of the Chasam, that's what Pischei Tshuva put it here, that if the minhag shutfim is that you cannot be chayzer even on the future, even on going weiter, techazman, then that is the minhag and that stays. And the Chasam Sofer here is a lashon that the Pischei Tshuva brings, that tanai between the shutfim, the hisnu beineim is kayam, even if it's not in accordance with Torah. It all depends on the minhag.
Is any of the halachas applying nowadays?
Yeah, everything.
Every tanai makes it.
Yeah, every tanai. Today we go minhag amadin. Every tanai works.
So then the halachas are not applying. You just go after the tanai.
The fact that there's, and what happens if there is no minhag amadin in a lot of things, or if the shtar shutfus is vague, Shulchan Aruch kicks in for sure. I'm going to conclude with Erech Shai. The Erech Shai in Sifkat and Hay says what happens if there is they didn't make a kinyan, but they made a shtar, and they wrote over there, shtar is chayvos, and they wrote that it's a mekabel fnei bezdin chashuv, v'oifen de leis bo asmachte, v'chulu v'chulu. Does that work on a davar shaloi bala olam enough that nobody could be chayzer by for the future or not? And the Erech Shai L'chatchila says that maybe it's enough, because davar shaloi bala olam, and you clearly said it's not a asmachte, and it's kiblu, as if kiblu b'fnei bezdin chashav, etc. should work. But the maskana seems like from the erech shai that if there was a shtaris chayvus without a kinyan, there was no kinyan, but there was only a shtar on a davar shalei b'la'olam, you could be chayzer going weiter, but you can't be chayzer on the past. But if you made a kinyan, you can't be chayzer even on the future. That we conclude Sa'if Gimel. I don't think I'll be able to finish it.